And welcome back to Nancy's Neighborhood. And I told you we're going to have activities today. We had Andy Johnson on with Tri Kids in Chattanooga. And I hope you all will check out that website. And some of you that might be interested in the children's triathlon, I hope you'll drive down there to Baylor and check that out, because I think it's going to be really good. And I know Andy's a very dedicated person about health and physical activities. And so I have Taryn Anderson and Stephanie Austin. Taryn is with the Heart Association.
Yes, ma'am.
And Stephanie's with Tenova Hospital.
Hello.
And they have an event coming up here in Cleveland that I wanted them to come on and talk about today, because this is not one of those things where you have to be tremendously physically fit.
True. That's true.
That is
So
true.
explain to them, gals, what we're going to do on August the 11th.
So August 11th is the Scott Hicks Memorial Heart Walk. So it is our community's way to really gather together, honor some of those that we've lost, like Scott, but
Way
also
too young.
Way too young.
Way too young.
Exactly, but also to celebrate those who are still with us, our survivors. So I love working with the
I know,
Tenova
the cardiac rehab team.
They're so energetic
They
and
are.
excited, and it's a short walk, so it's not very long. It's only about 2 miles. But there is a survivor loop. So, some of our folks who are part of cardiac rehab, if they feel like maybe their doctor hasn't released them yet
Right.
to do a lot of physical activity, they can go just a short route and come back. We try and do it early in the morning before it's too terribly hot.
Right.
And we do have some folks who come who just want to be there and celebrate with us, and maybe they don't participate in the walk itself.
Oh, okay. So they're standing on the sideline, like Andy said, cheering.
Correct.
That's right.
And doing
Correct.
whatever.
Yes.
That's great. So, how long have we been doing this heart walk? This isn't the first year.
It's not the first year. We've done it for several years now. What I love about it is that those survivors who come out are so passionate. So I was actually at Tenova a couple weeks ago and had a gentleman walk in. We give our survivors who are heart survivors red caps. We call them our red caps. And then our stroke survivors get a white cap. And they get a little
okay.
pin
Yes.
every time they come. And so a gentleman
and
walked in.
many will wear their hat from previous years with their pins in it.
That's right. That's
It's,
right.
it's almost an honor, badge of honor.
is,
How
it
many
is.
heart
Wow.
walks they've participated in.
That's right.
It's really a neat.
And the gentleman that came to cardiac rehab, and he did not know that I would be there that day, so he was not wearing it to impress me. But he wore it proudly, and he was very
Good.
excited. And
Good.
they have their own T-shirts in cardiac rehab, and we've got lots of different organizations locally who are participating. Tenova, being our lead sponsor, that'll be there and walking. Everybody's got their reason why that they want to walk, and maybe you don't know anybody that you've lost from heart disease or stroke, which is unlikely in this, in the Southeast. Unfortunately, it's very unlikely.
Yes.
Maybe you had a child who was born with a cardiovascular heart defect, or maybe it doesn't have anything to do with heart disease or stroke, but it's, kind of like you were talking about earlier, about wanting to be healthier, wanting to show your kids that exercise is not a bad word, wanting to show your family that you can do these activities together without it necessarily having to be a chore. So there's all different reasons that people come out. The walk itself doesn't start till a little bit later in the morning, but starting at 8:30, we'll have hands-only CPR demonstrations out there with Tenova. Lots of fun stuff for the kids to do.
First Baptist Choir.
First Baptist
is
Choir
gonna
will be out there
performing.
singing the national anthem for us.
Oh, neat.
Of course, the Hicks family comes out in full force to
They do.
support.
Of course they do.
But it really is a festival atmosphere in the morning, and really an uplifting, a nice way for us to memorialize the people that we've lost, but also to celebrate the people who are still here with us.
And I visited the cardiac rehab unit there at Tenova a couple of times for other events, and those people, some of them don't have to be there anymore.
Right, but they continue
They
to
would
come.
not miss for
Correct.
anything.
Correct.
That's right.
And they're there every morning on the treadmill or
Yes.
whatever it is that they're doing, and I'm just amazed.
Yep, that's right.
It is an amazing program, and for those that aren't familiar with what cardiac rehab is, if you've had a cardiac event, you'll get stepped down from the hospital into a program where you can safely do activities under supervised care. And there's different levels within the cardiac rehab program. And for us, we've dedicated a lot of resources to our cardiac program, which includes the cardiac rehab, and that was launching the brand new center for them. And Mr. Hicks was one of those individuals that we had worked with over the years. And Coleman said, we will have the facility we need for that. And if you've had the chance to tour it, it's beautiful. It's very well set up. The staff are amazing. And the people are amazing in that program. And last year we have a huge showing from the cardiac rehab group, and we're going to have that photo posted, and then we have some where they came around earlier. But I know personally, I've always taken on this initiative because it does speak to my family. We've had heart disease in my family forever, since I can remember, and we can go back in generations. So knowing that, the more educated you are about what changes to do, you can improve your chances. And I think that's really what it's about, is even with the location being on the Greenway, maybe you didn't know the Heart Walk was going to be that morning, but you see a giant red heart standing there and balloons and all these people walking, it brings you over. And then we have the chance to provide additional education on healthier lifestyles. These are people that are making changes. Listen to the success stories. Even though you may have heart disease in your family, that doesn't mean that's the way it has to be. You can make changes.
Right.
And that's really what Coleman's whole philosophy is, always taking healthcare outside of the hospital. Here's a chance. I know you're like, oh, the hospital is telling us to be healthy, but yes, that's what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
We don't want you to have that.
That's right.
Exactly. So that's really what these type of events are, and why it's so important for us to support these events and go out to the community, educate firsthand, show people these are success stories. It does work.
Yep.
And you said Greenway, so let's tell everybody where we're going to be Saturday the 11th.
So we'll be at the stage there on the Greenway. What I love about this event is that there's no registration fee.
Correct.
You know, if you've got a
Just come.
family of 4, 5, 6, there's no cost for you to get in.
Free. We
Free.
love free.
Exactly.
We love free.
My goal, of course, this is a fundraising event of the Heart Association, and we need those donor dollars to continue our education and research. But also, my goal is always to have that, Joe who walks in off the street and learns hands-only CPR.
Exactly.
A few weeks later, maybe he saves a person. Or you have...
And not to interrupt, we hear stories about that all the time.
Very good.
That's right. Hands-only CPR was developed with the research of the American Heart Association. If I'm walking downtown Cleveland and someone falls out in front of me, I'm a good Samaritan, but I don't know that I want to put my mouth on their mouth.
You're exactly right.
And so
You're
our
exactly
research found that, a lot of times we have enough oxygen in our blood as adults that we can do those compressions, call 911, those first responders will come. But really keeping that heart muscle alive and pressing hard and fast on the center of the chest is what's really going to save a life.
Correct.
And so we want someone to learn that. We want them to learn about sodium reduction.
Exactly.
We want them to learn about healthier eating and being active as a family. And so maybe they didn't fundraise this year, but maybe they came and learned that and they get inspired and next year they're a fundraiser.
Okay, so by a fundraiser, each person that's going to participate gets people to sponsor them, $1 a mile, whatever, however you want to do
Or
it.
even a company decides to have a team.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
That you can have a team.
Okay.
Yeah. They can find all of that. It's all at heart.org/Cleveland Heart Walk. It'll show you there where we have the Cleveland day. It'll also show you the Chattanooga day if August 11th isn't good for you. If you maybe need a little more time, or maybe you work with an organization that you are in Chattanooga and in Cleveland. We want everybody to have the opportunity to come and be a part of this, and really it's a movement locally.
Where do you walk in Chattanooga?
We're at AT&T Field, October 27th.
Okay,
That's
AT&T
right.
Field. Well, people may want to come down there just to be at
That's
AT&T
right.
Field.
And for the people on Facebook, our goal with the Heart Association is to have opportunities all over the nation. So if you're watching from a different state, you can always just go online to the Heart Walk website and type in your address there, and it'll find one near you. Our goal is not necessarily always to have you involved in this one. You may have a family member in California who's involved with one. Unfortunately, heart disease is the #1 killer of Americans.
Yes.
Stroke is now #5. Luckily, just in the last few years, it's dropped from #3. But 80% of it is preventable. And so the message of the Heart Walk and the Heart Association is you can take care of yourself. You can stop this. Not a lot of causes out there can say that, unfortunately.
Exactly.
Right.
But we really want people to take prevention in their own hands for stroke and heart disease. And we're hoping this is the catalyst for that.
And that is great. So actually they can show up like about 8:30
Yes, ma'am.
on the 11th at the Greenway stage.
Yes, ma'am.
And just register.
That's right.
And the other thing that we like to communicate is understanding what the warning signs are. We want to do the preventative, but it is imperative that people understand what the warning signs are. And warning signs are different for men as they are for women. And I'm not going to stereotype women. Sometimes we tend to take care of everybody else. And if something's happening to us,
We're selfless.
yes,
Yeah, we're
it's,
selfless.
it's nothing. It's nothing. And so many times we've lost people because they just didn't listen to what their body was telling them. So that's the other thing we provide education on. And we actually hand out magnets that have those warning signs on it because you can put it on your refrigerator or somewhere in your house. And sometimes, unfortunately, a child or a grandchild is visiting and they're the ones that see it, dial 911. That's the main message, dial 911.
Right. That's right.
Get the emergency services started.
Exactly. Those 911 operators know how to walk you through it.
Exactly.
For a man, a lot of times it does look a little bit more like shortness of breath and a little bit of pain in your arm and maybe your back even. But specifically for women, a lot of times we see jaw pain or anxiety. I had a female survivor who told me one time she thought she was just having an anxiety attack. And so she sort of, put it aside for a little while and then realized, okay, now I am getting a little bit of pain in my chest. And because of the message, she had actually very recently heard our message and said, I need to go to the hospital. And sure enough, she was having a heart attack at at 37 years old.
Right.
Wow.
And it is happening, unfortunately, sooner
Younger
than
and younger.
used to.
Yeah.
So,
And of course, like you said, if there's a history in the family, then
course.
you
Yes.
definitely need to be aware
Yes.
of these things, and you also need to be preventative with things that you do.
Correct.
Exercise, watch what you eat, sodium intake,
That's right.
and things like that. If there's no history, it can still.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not going to. We're not going to say just because you have a history, you're due, but
Exactly.
you're not. So, and I think that's something people need to know and understand. It might not, and then of course you have situations where, with blood clots,
That's
yes.
right.
and that's another thing that, there may not be a history of that.
That's right.
correct.
But it happens.
And I think that's where the more you can help educate the family.
Yeah.
When we do the hands-on CPR, we actually train the kids too.
Good.
Again, it's going to be a little unnerving if something happens, but if they're prepared and it's not just out of nowhere, then they can act faster and help. So I think that's part of
That's right.
why we do it, is to make it not a normal scenario, but something just, okay, if something does happen, I have some preparation.
Yeah, and if somebody feels like they may have been having symptoms or they're not really sure, we always advocate go to your doctor, of
Yes,
course.
Right.
definitely.
But there is a list of symptoms on heart.org, so just HEART.org, and they can click on there. It's very evident what you're looking for, but it says signs and symptoms on there. My thing is always, it might be a little embarrassing if you get there and you've got indigestion, but wouldn't you rather it be indigestion than you're putting it off and a couple of weeks later having a heart attack
Right.
at home?
Right.
So we always say you've got to be an advocate for yourself, and we have great doctors here at Tenova.
Oh, we do.
But
That is true.
if they push back on you and you feel like something's really wrong, stand up for yourself.
That's
You've
exactly
got to
right.
tell them this is what I'm feeling and this is important. I need you to take me seriously. Stroke, same thing. So stroke is a little bit easier to diagnose sometimes because the symptoms are so obvious, I should say, but
Yeah.
sometimes not. We say fast. And so I've seen a lot on 75. You'll see the billboards for
Yes,
fast.
fast signs.
So face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, time to call 911.
Right.
Don't skip the T. We have a
No.
lot of people who try and get in the
Yes,
car.
we've
Do not
actually,
get in the car.
Yes, even with heart attacks, people will attempt to drive
right.
themselves, and that's why we say just call 911. They have medicine on the ambulance; they can begin the process.
Right.
If you're driving yourself, you could risk hurting yourself or someone else.
Someone else. That's exactly right. Ladies, thank you all so much for being on with me today.
Thank you
now,
for having
they can
us.
go online at www.heart.org /Cleveland Heart Walk.
That's right.
For any information. But it's August the 11th,
Yes.
8:30 in the morning at the stage on the Greenway. And all they have to do is show up.
Yeah,
That's
just
right.
come on out. If you've not been, just come.
Yeah.
Come see what it's about.
And wear comfortable shoes.
Yes.
That's right.
because you're going to walk. How far are we going to walk?
A little over 2 miles, about 800 yards if you're a survivor.
Okay. All right. Very good. And so there is a distinction. Just
Yes.
normal folks walk this, survivors walk this,
Yeah.
which I think is great.
And we
That's
even
right.
have some runners that run it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
so
well,
you know.
show-offs. Of course we have show-offs,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Ladies, thank you all so
Thank
much for being
you.
on with
Thanks
me.
for
I
having
really
us.
appreciate y'all coming out on this lovely day we're having in the neighborhood. Folks, don't go away. I'm going to be right back with some other events that are going on in the county and the area that you might need to know about. So watch our commercials, support our sponsors because they pay our bills, and I'll be right back.